Folks, welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am not Patrick Daugherty. I am Denny Carter, and I'm your host today because Pat Daugherty has once again added a human being to his family. His wife is doing fine, reportedly. ESPN reports after giving birth to a baby girl this week, and we're very happy for him and his family. I was texting with Pat a little bit before the show, and little baby didn't sleep much on the first night. So Pat is drinking more coffee than David Lynch at this point. And for folks who that might escape that joke, look it up. Anyway, I'm joined by two of my favorite guys here, Kyle Dvorchak and Patrick Kerrane. This is the first time I've seen Patrick Kerrane since he escaped to some foreign land and was underwater for 3 weeks straight, I believe.
That's right.
It is good to see you, Kerrane. And to start off the show, and we're going to get into the news here. There are some actually really newsy items that we need to discuss, and we're going to get into Kyle's mock draft 1.0, which obviously is exactly right. He didn't miss anything. And then my piece on some wide receivers. But to kick things off, Kerrane, I wanted to ask, since your big best ball win, will you ever again deposit on any platform, or are you done depositing for life?
No, I'm going to be depositing. And Pete Overzet's been getting on me about this because I did withdraw. I withdrew the $2 million off of Underdog Fantasy.com, and it's now, I at first I thought, I'll just keep it on here and keep playing best ball. And a bunch of financial advisors, they shook me, Denny. They actually grabbed me by the collar and shook me. You're crazy.
Right.
So the money's now earning interest.
Hey, I hear that's the way to go. So that is a question I had. Right. I mean, I figured you were either going to keep it all in, maybe withdraw a little bit for dinner each night, but
it's like his checking account now is just
right.
So it's a public checking account. People can every time I stream, they're like, "Oh, you had a nice little Saturday there, Pat."
I thought of this as I may or may not have been making a deposit to play a little XFL.
No, I left enough on there. I currently have like $1,800 on Underdog, which feels like I don't have to think about this, but it's not enough to max BBM 4, which I will be planning on doing. So I will be depositing before the end of this year, most likely.
Right. And so my original question was actually going to be, have you drafted a best ball team this season? But the answer is absolutely yes. You've been doing this.
I've been drafting since I've been back in the country pretty regularly.
You have any finish? Because you're all going to be all slows, I assume, right?
No, I'm not slows. I did 2 slows, which are still going. I'm doing 2 FFPC slows, which are going now. But I can't do slows, man. I can't do them, so
I don't like them.
I very quickly was like, nope, I'm doing fast. I've done about like 15 fast big boards.
Mm-hmm.
And Kyle, I did have a question for you as well.
For the poor, you have a question for the impoverished.
Right. Yeah, right. That's me. But I had a question for you. This is mostly selfish on my part. But if you happen to be dabbling in XFL Showdown tonight between St. Louis and Seattle, who are we putting in the captain, Kyle?
The Seattle's like third receiver. They basically run, I think they run like 4 wide, almost every player, 3 wide every play. So it's not Gordon, it's not Pearson, it's the other one, and I don't remember who it is. I'll look it up.
Is it VC?
I don't remember. I don't remember any of these guys.
Oh no, I got Blake Jackson. Blake Jackson. Yes.
It's Blake Jackson. You're right. It is Blake Jackson. For the listeners, one of these spring startup leagues, the XFL is back, and Josh Gordon, maybe one of the 3 to 5 players that like universally everyone who's just a football fan knows is in this league. And of course, that means he's going to be like 50% rostered in a league where I don't know if he is going to play a snap. So I full fade him. Of course, a 50.
And this is coming from a guy who has 15 best ball drafts under his belt, completed drafts, despite being out of the country for 3 weeks. You guys are sick. This is sick behavior.
The edge in the XFL, especially the first week, I think it'll get closer and closer to correct as we go on. But 50% of people played a wide receiver who like could have gone out and like been a healthy scratch, right? Not played at all. Because we just don't know. We have no really strong reporting. That was unlikely. And as it turns out, he caught the first touchdown of the game. It was one of the best plays. And it didn't bother me. I'm fine. I'm doing well.
All he did was he caught the touchdown. He had a big drive late in the game. Okay, where he had 2 or 3 good, nice catches downfield, and that's all he did. He was like
nothing. 50% owned and could have gotten a 0. That happened to some of the other like 40% owned guys that like we just don't know.
Really?
And they got like 0s or close to it. Some of them might have literally gotten 0s, but the most popular one, and Josh Gordon is awesome. This is not to discredit him. This is to discredit the field. The most popular one, of course, fish swimming around and get there.
I will say my process on playing Austin Prohl last week in XFL was that his dad was an NFL player and his dad is the assistant coach on the team. What do you think? His kid's not going to get out there? Come on.
That's good process.
Now, I listen to the Rotoworld Football Show when I'm not on it, and one thing that I'm missing right now is the ability to speed up the conversation. You can go 1.5x, you can go to 2x. I would love to 2x this right now.
You just hit the 60-second skip button. Skip.
Look, Kyle and I are agitating for a 2-hour XFL podcast, but we'll get to that later. All right, let's jump into news here because this is an NFL show first and foremost, except for when I completely drive it off course. So we actually had this report come in just before we went live on air, and it's not the best news and very disappointing and big letdown. ESPN's Jeff Legwold reports that Javonte Williams multiple knee ligament tears, quote, could keep him out well into the 2023 season. I don't think this is the biggest shock in the world. We were chatting a little bit about this before the show, and that knee injury was very serious. It was not your standard knee injury. However, even though that is still very serious. So where do we go from here with the Denver backfield that, as far as we can tell, and we're pretty good at this, they have no running back signed to the roster at the moment.
No, I have an update. They have some. They're probably reserve/future guys. I know they added Tyler Batty. I think it was late last year. Maybe it was right.
He's not on the Ravens anymore. I didn't realize that.
No. They waived him at some point, and he ended up on the Broncos. And he was kind of an interesting prospect. But I mean, he signed for whatever whatever the minimum is for. He'll be a second-year player now.
Right.
He signed for something near, if not the exact minimum. I'm not. I wouldn't count on him even being on the roster.
Undersized day 3 pick, kind of a versatile guy, not particularly. He's unlikely to ever be a lead back in the league.
And one team has already taken him and then passed on him, saying he's not it. So I really wouldn't count on it. I personally don't think the guy that starts week 1, assuming it's not Javonte, is on the roster. After that, it's like Demarie Crockett and some guy, Tyreek McAllister. I don't even know who that is, frankly. And Chase Edmonds. They're going to almost certainly cut Chase Edmonds. He was not good with the Dolphins. He was not particularly useful with them. And it saves them something like $5 million. I wrote them up as almost a lock to cut him.
Gotcha.
There's also some pretty interesting free agents available that I think are pretty talented running backs. Like Damian Harris is available. Rashad Penny is available. I don't think either of those guys would be like particularly expensive to bring in. Obviously, if Saquon hits the open market, he'll get paid. But they could maybe look at doing that. They've got to figure out a way to salvage this Russ experience somehow. But I would feel better about Javonte if they had a guy like Alexander Mattison under contract. Maybe I don't want them to sign Alexander Mattison, but my point is, like, if they had a guy that we knew he was already kind of dealing with, like if Melvin Gordon was still there, maybe, and it's like, okay, they'll feel comfortable just keeping this guy in place. And then once Javonte's healthy, we know he's better than this guy and he'll be fine. I think it's a decent rookie class. There's some depth to it. There's lots of intriguing guys. I think it's gonna be kind of a hit or miss class, but there's lots of intriguing guys. It would be unfortunate to see them spend like a 3rd round pick on a running back this year, because I think there could be some real hits in the 3rd round of this draft class. And then, yeah, like I said, I mean, they could bring in a Penny or a Harris, which would definitely make his life more difficult.
David Montgomery, also a free agent.
That's another good one.
And I don't know why he seems like a Bronco signing to me. I feel like
he could have that like Melvin Gordon too, where he does a lot of stuff at a fine level, right? Like I don't think he's terrible by any means. He's an okay runner, good in pass protection, can catch out of the backfield. And that's kind of what Melvin Gordon was. Like it was clear Javonte was more explosive, more exciting, the tackle breaker, but Gordon had a role in that offense. And I think like Kerrane said, that's what you want is even below that, though, I think David Montgomery would be like an upgrade over what they got from Melvin Gordon. You want just nothing more than the bare bones placeholder so Javonte can come back and get his job right away. Like Kerrane said, like they could luck into a pretty strong running back, like potential starter in, the 4th or 5th round, if that's what they choose to do. No guarantee that that's what they find, but this class is deep. Like that could happen. And that's like the nightmare scenario for Javonte, obviously.
Yes. By the way, at a charity event, he said, Javonte Williams said that he would hope to be back by training camp, but that does seem very optimistic at this point. I would say, this will be a major topic of conversation into the spring and obviously into the summer. And it's always a little awkward to boil this down to like pure fantasy talk when a guy, seems to have his, career sort of in doubt at this point. But are you maybe taking a chance on him in best ball if he falls to a certain point? I mean, he is, like you guys know well, and listeners know, incredibly explosive. Like he pops in every category. I guess the hope is that he gets back to that form. Would you be interested if folks let him drop in best ball?
So he's going right now in like the 6th round. He tends to go like maybe the 5th, 6th round range. He tends to go after Jamar Gibbs. And I prefer taking Gibbs over him. Gibbs, one of the rookie running backs. He's a pass catcher. I think he's going to be drafted pretty highly. Very good chance of being drafted by at least the end of the 2nd round. I think a very nice profile for fantasy. After that, you get to this range of running backs who are like very shaky. We're feeling very shaky about it. Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, who might face a long suspension. Once you get to that range, I guess I'm normally not taking running backs, but I think I would still feel comfortable going with Javonte over those guys. But I don't know. I guess this news makes me wonder if I should just kind of consider him like a Dalvin Cook, where I'm just like, I'm going to let someone else take him for the time being. The reason that I would be a little bit more interested in Javonte than most of those guys, though, is that when he gets back, he could ramp up towards the end of the season. Maybe he gets back to the form that he was flashing in the fantasy playoffs. And unlike a veteran who's declining, he's more likely to make a difference for you in the fantasy playoffs, win you the money that way. And I think, if he's going to fall to the 6th, 7th, then I probably will take some shots on him there.
Yeah. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, to me, he like vibes as a player whose ADP really has one direction to go, because it doesn't sound like positive news is coming, right? It sounds like we get close and closer to training camp. Like, he's not ready yet. He gets on the pup list to start the training camp. Maybe it turns around and he comes off before the start of the season, but it seems like his ADP has really one direction to go. And if we can predict that ADP going that way, I'll just wait until it continues to get lower. Because like Kerrane said, like I think there is a scenario in which he comes back not even halfway through the year, maybe a little earlier than that. And by halfway through the year, he's the Javonte we want to be drafting as a 1st, 2nd round turn kind of guy.
Yeah.
But I think that is maybe not a long shot, but it's definitely far from guaranteed. I think the field will not fully process that until we get into the summer, probably.
He's actually,
sorry, go ahead.
I just want to correct myself. He's actually, I was wrong about him going ahead of Mixon and Cook. He's going after those guys, after Aaron Jones. He is going ahead of Kamara, but he's going just ahead of Dameon Pierce, Isaiah Pacheco, interestingly, J.K. Dobbins, who, I think people are now burned by his slow recovery, but Dobbins is going to be 2 years removed. So maybe he should fall behind that group. Like, are you taking Dameon Pierce or are you taking Javonte Williams?
I guess it kind of depends on how you start your draft, but probably Pierce at this point. This will be something we're going to talk about, obviously, throughout the off season. Lots to obviously overthink here with the Denver backfield, and it'll be interesting to see what they do in free agency. All right, on to news that shook the NFL world to its core on Tuesday or Wednesday, I believe. Robert Woods was released by the Titans and immediately posted to Twitter that he has his freedom and that he is free of the Titans. I didn't see that coming, but apparently he was not a fan of being a Titan. Anyway, Kyle, is there any scenario in which Robert Woods can land in an offense where he's interesting for fantasy purposes?
Probably not for me. He was like 79th in yards per out run last year. He was far, far worse than Treylon Burks. So it wasn't just the offense. Obviously, the offense he played on wasn't going to produce a lot of yards on a per route basis, but it was clear that just the younger, more talented player on that team was supremely better, like orders of magnitude better. It was, I think, his career worst yards per route run, worst yards after the catch per reception since his rookie season. Like, the Rams simply moved on from him basically for cap reasons, and this team has done the same. Like, the NFL market has really devalued Robert Woods and what he can do at this point, and I'm going to do the same. And even if he lands on a really strong offense, you know, the Chiefs take a flyer on him, that type of deal. We just ran this gamut with Juju, someone who, much like Robert Woods, even like physically sort of a similar archetype in the way they play. Well, he was good a few years ago, and maybe he just needs the right landing spot. Like, I'm not really willing to gamble on that when we've been shown year after year that Woods just isn't the player he used to be. The situation isn't as important because a receiver needs a certain level of talent to shine through, even on the Chiefs offense. Like we saw that with Juju and MVS. So no, I can't even imagine among the best landing spots that I will like him whatever ADP he settles at.
Here's what's going to happen. And you heard it here first, folks. Robert Woods is going to be signed by the Ravens, and he's going to see 90 targets. So there you go.
That is, Sammy Watkins comp is actually, I could kind of see him going the kind of. I mean,
he's the perfect Ravens receiver. He's old. He's probably a little washed up. He's not productive. That's Ravens.
Known as a good run blocker too. That was
he's tough, right? He's tough, you know, but he's not good, and that's what the Ravens look for in a receiver.
Well, really. I don't know if he qualifies to go to the Falcons, but they seem to take every Titans cast off. There's even rumors they maybe might go after Tannehill. So if you're on the Titans, you always have a home in Atlanta. Generally I agree with Kyle's points. I would note he tore his ACL in November of 2021. He's 30, so we don't love that he really struggled to come back from that injury. He might just be done now. But if he were to land somewhere and he would continue to be free, which he basically is, and he's going the very, very last rounds. If the market was basically like, I don't care that he's signed somewhere good, I think you would probably be mixing him in the late rounds. In the same way, Julio Jones. I mean, but think about that. We were taking Julio Jones in the 11th and 12th round of best ball drafts. Turns out he was completely washed. Robert Woods, I think we have more reason to think heading into this year is completely washed. But as an 18th round pick or something, I would keep the light on if it's a good landing spot.
We love our Bobby Trees, and we'll keep him in the player pool somehow.
Keep him in the player pool.
A deep league. All right, on to Kyler Murray, reportedly ahead of schedule on his recovery from an late season ACL injury. Kerrane, does this change the way you might value Kyler in best ball drafts, and of course other Cardinals players here?
Kyler's tough for me because he's going in a range where, like, if he misses a big chunk of the season, then it's really going to hurt your team. He's got an ADP on Underdog of 111. Yeah. That's a range where you want a contributing player. You don't want, it's not like a 15th round pick where you can basically have them just kind of chill on your bench until the playoffs, and maybe they hit one spike week for you, and it makes a huge difference. As a quarterback as well, you're only taking in these leagues like 2-3 quarterbacks. If one of them's not doing anything for a big chunk of the season, that's a problem. And this quote was about him potentially being back earlier than expected, but then that he might still miss a pretty big chunk of the season. I've got the quote from you. It's from owner Michael Bidwell, and it's just said that he could return. His return could be earlier than this midseason. That's not really. Yeah, that's
giving us much to work with. Maybe it's a little optimistic than what we came into, maybe, but like that doesn't really do, like you said, that doesn't really rule out much more than he misses 9 or 10 games. And he said, I think he said maybe too. So what, like we've ensured that he's playing by week 12 or 13. This report doesn't move the needle at all for me, frankly.
I think it's a reminder that your 10th round pick is like a 50-50 shot to come back before halfway through the season. Like,
yeah,
that's your 10th round pick. That seems aggressively high to me for Kyler Murray. Especially they're talking about going more run heavy. Like this could be like Deshaun Watson or something where it's like, yeah, but once he gets back, he's winning me everything. It's like, and then he actually doesn't change anything for you.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly. It's the health is like the first massive hurdle for your fantasy team to clear. And then there are many other ones with it looks like they'll probably move on from DeAndre Hopkins. So he's gonna have a different cast of weapons. They've got a new offensive coordinator and a new head coach, obviously. And he wasn't particularly good last year. So there are just so many, like, what do you win when you win is kind of a phrase we've used here. If you win the health battle and he comes back way earlier than expected, week 3 or 4, you have so many other hurdles to clear that I totally agree. His price right now, like I wouldn't touch it.
Right.
Yeah.
So then the follow-up question would be, Kyle, what do the Cardinals do at quarterback in the meantime? Because Colt McCoy is also suffered an injury late in the season. They're talking about him possibly missing some of 2023. I mean, not that Colt McCoy would be the savior of the offense or for fantasy purposes, but are they going to be pressed into signing, like a free agent to play, I don't know, half the season or more?
Yeah, I mean, like in a literal sense, they don't have to sign a modestly expensive free agent, but just teams are going to do this in the way we talked about. Could you get him back for halfway and maybe hits the ground running, a la the hope with Deshaun Watson last year? Ironically, the exact same quarterback could be this team's first half of the season quarterback in Jacoby Brissett. Obviously, the Cardinals clean house on their coaching staff. Offensive coordinator Drew Petzing is was the Browns quarterbacks coach. So he'd get to bring in a quarterback who knows his system, or at least if he plans on running some form of the Browns system, he would know that system well, not super expensive, and makes sense as like the bridge level quarterback in terms of play quality. So I think he's like a pretty strong bet to end up being his free agent. He's a pretty strong bet to be this team's quarterback in week 1 among like literally we can only guess at the free agent pool. They could dip as low as maybe like Andy Dalton. To me, I think the most interesting thing that I would bet anything they don't end up doing is just take a shot on a rookie, even just like a day 3 rookie, in the way we get like Brock Purdy's and Gardner Minshew's, who pop up as being like very strong like salary cap values in that they're good backup quarterbacks, and Purdy's a good starter. But even if he was just a good backup to Jimmy Garoppolo, if you can get a good backup quarterback for like, was like 1 point something, 2 million over 4 years, that'd be great. That's like a good way to save money at the quarterback position. And they're not risking anything by losing games early in the year. Like even if Jacoby Brissett is as good as he was with the Browns, they're probably still a sub 500 team just based on the talent around him. This is by all accounts going to be a rebuild year if mid-season or later is when Kyler Murray comes back.
But then why bring someone in at all? Like they've got McCoy under contract. Why wouldn't you just...
that's just what teams do. I mean, of course, I think I even brought up, I thought Houston's quarterback, Clayton Tune, probably going to be a day 3 quarterback, but physically actually has like a lot of strong physical attributes that could maybe parallel in practice some of the running Kyler does. And you can make a more easy transition between them. But like, I have no faith.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I have no faith in teams just saying like, I guess we're just going to lose. We just don't see teams in the NFL do that. I think it's by far the smartest option is to take a shot or even multiple shots. Take a 6th and 7th round quarterback. Who cares? Take those guys and see if one of them can be a really cheap, strong backup option for Kyler Murray in the future. Teams just don't really have
Do you
the
think
sort
this
of wherewithal.
I know we had to deal with watching the most cringy clips of all time from what's his face when the new coach
Gannon, yeah,
Jonathan
Gannon, yeah. I keep wanting to call him Shane Waldron, the OC from Seattle. But yeah, so Gannon, like, are they actually sold? Because they're doing. I mean, the clips are so cringy that I actually am like wondering if can you be that cringy? And is that really your personality, or are you just so bad at pretending you like this guy that you've had many conversations about moving on from?
Kyler,
you're talking about Kyler.
Yeah, I'm talking about Gannon. My conspiracy theory is that Gannon is not as cringy as he seems because he's coming off cringy. I don't actually really believe this, but let's just say he's coming off cringy because he's trying to hide how much he doesn't want Kyler.
Right. No, I'm with you. No, this is kind of a thought I've had recently. And Kyler is potentially a very good player. I don't think that he has like top end NFL quarterback in his range of outcomes, but very good. Also a coach killer. And I think Gannon knows that. I think Gannon knows like this guy is going to ruin me in one way or another, just like he ruined Kingsbury. I'm not saying Kingsbury was,
Kingsbury
great
helped
beyond
out
that. But yeah, Kingsbury helped his cause in getting axed. But yeah, no, I that might be it. Also, he just might be cringe. I mean,
I think he really is just super.
He's probably just cringe.
That stuff, guy. If listeners are not understand what we're talking about, go look at the Cardinals.
Don't go look at it.
Social media. No, you must go look. You have to experience it for yourself. Don't listen to our account of it, and you'll see Jonathan Gannon meeting a player. I don't even know who it was, and doing laser sounds. Pew 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 pew. When he meets the player, and the player's face just drops. Like, what is going on here? So,
someone said he was. I'm sure many people said this on Twitter. He's very Michael Scott-esque. And that it checks out. That's a perfect comp for him. For the conspiracy theory, which I totally think it's possible. Like clearly, like there was some friction between probably not just Kyler Murray and Cliff, but Kyler Murray and the organization as well. But the contract he's under now, it doesn't even get below a 30 million dead cap hit until 2026, the offseason before 2026. So there's no way out of it for the immediate future, barring a trade, which would still probably have to work around his contract in some sense.
The Kyler contract was probably not good, and then the injury made it really bad. I think. Yeah. I think that's going to end up being a terrible.
Here's an idea: if you're about to put a clause in that says you have to do X amount of tape watching per week, don't put the clause in because you just shouldn't issue the contract. Maybe that's a sign of where things should really be standing.
This is not a joke, and it's not a bit at all, but my son has been playing a lot of Fortnite recently, and
we do that, yeah.
And he said, to me the other day, and not knowing anything about Kyler Murray, he says to me, "Dad, I was playing against this guy named Kyler today," and I was like, "Wait, what?" I said, "You're playing against Kyle." Anyway, it turns out not to be the quarterback.
Oh no!
But,
if only your son could understand the comedy of the situation.
I know,
that's pretty good.
Well, I told him, and he said, "Cardinals, what's that? Was that a team?"
That's right. It wasn't Call of Duty. Kyler's a big COD player. I don't know of him as a Fortnite player. So
that's what I said. There is a difference between I don't know what it is, but there is a difference between those two games. All right, moving on to the next news item. We have what I believe, and I said this on Twitter, and I halfway mean it. Okay, and it's a little bit of a joke, but I halfway mean it. That this whole thing where the Bucs are pretending that Kyle Trask is going to be their unquestioned Week 1 starter, I believe it's a psychological operation, otherwise known as a psyop. And there is no other explanation for this. We have Bruce Arians today, someone on Twitter asked me, didn't Bruce Arians retire? And I said, yes, but he's still calling the shots in the front office. It's hard to say. Bruce Arians says, we are in good hands with Kyle Trask. The new offensive coordinator for Tampa has talked up Trask as a viable starting quarterback, a point guard of sorts in the Bucs offense. So we have Kyle Trask entering his age 25 season after being drafted in the second round of the 2021 draft. He has 9 regular season pass attempts to his name in the league. This can't be real. Kyle, tell me this can't be real.
Well, it is real if you read between the lines. He called the supposed starting quarterback, or at least what would have to line up right now. If we were playing a football game today, I guess he's our starting quarterback. He called him a distributor. That's what you say about backups. Like, that is clearly he's trying to sugarcoat his analysis. But he's like, yeah, I watched the tape at Florida, really liked it. He was able to get the ball to the other players on the team. I'm like, that's not something you say about a quarterback you're really rearing to get into the lineup in week 1. It is possible, given their cap situation, which they're forced to take $35 million Brady dead cap money this year. I don't know if Brady didn't agree to it or they just didn't even care to sign him to a dummy contract in which they could spread that over the future. But their cap situation is terrible right now. They have a decent amount of free agents that not all will get re-signed, and they'll spend some money to re-sign them. maybe the musical chairs land in that they are forced to start Kyle Trask. And that wouldn't be the end of the world, right? He's young. He's still on a rookie contract, though that's coming to an end, basically. But they find out what he is. And more importantly, if he's, which is probably the case, not successful, you get a chance to get a good draft pick next year and find the real quarterback of the future. I do not think that's the plan this year. I think they have to be looking at either trading up, maybe if they get, I don't want to say lucky because Jimmy Garoppolo is not really the lottery ticket you want, but say they can get him on a reasonably priced deal. I'm sure they'd consider that. He's not clearly their number one plan. He is a backup plan. He's probably deep in the backup Rolodex of plans, but it's an option. And I think Dave Canales, I don't know how you say his name, was being kind to him, saying that there are some things he can do well. He didn't really describe him in a way that I would call him an NFL starter, though. And I think he knows that.
That's a good point. Kerrane,
what's your take? Where do you think the Bucs think they are? Because if you look at their like Super Bowl odds, they're plus 7,500 for the Super Bowl, so they're like firmly out of it. Like the Bears are plus 6,000. They're even with the Falcons, but they're quite a bit shorter odds than the Colts plus 18,000, the Texans plus 20,000, the Cardinals plus 18,000. I'm looking at FanDuel for these. And I don't know, man. If I was the Bucs, I might say, job's yours, Kyle. Let's lose some games. Let's lose some games, buddy.
I think that's not a bad outcome. And their cap situation, because so much of that cap is literally just eaten up by Brady's, dead money hitting in this year, actually isn't that bad going forward. They have a lot of outgoing free agents, so they'll also be losing kind of bleeding talent over the next few years. But their cap situation clears up pretty quickly. They could be trading back to acquire more picks. And more importantly, if they start Kyle Trask a lot, either he's good, and that's a good outcome, but more likely, like I said, he's bad, which is also kind of a good outcome. I don't know if they believe that. I give teams very little credit for believing they're in the middle of rebuilds because we see so few teams actually commit to it. And that means that ownership and the GM and the coach have to be behind the plan. And you so rarely get everybody in line to say, yes, we're doing this. We're going to take 2-3 seasons of pain in order to rebuild and to get back to a Super Bowl level, unless I guess the goal is just to, I don't know, eke into the postseason once in a while. If that's the goal, teams can do that. That you can do that after 1 year of terrible play, and you get a high draft pick and maybe get there that way. But if the Bucs want to get back to anything resembling Super Bowl contention, they're going to have to endure at least a couple years of really, really bad football and probably undergo a lot of changes in the process. I just have a hard time saying that Kyle Trask is not going to get some competition. I mean, just like even if they draft like a 4th round quarterback, like I bet you that guy could compete legitimately with Kyle Trask.
100% agreed. Yeah, I don't have any faith in Kyle Trask doing anything, but I do wonder. I mean, I guess we'll see. Like, is Mike Evans going to get shopped? Because
possibly, I hope so.
He's on the last year of his deal. So if they're looking to move Mike Evans, I think that's a major sign. Like we hear any buzz about that I think that doubles as buzz that Kyle Trask might really be treated as the starter here.
Yeah.
Because if you're moving Mike Evans, you're tanking. And I don't know, they probably should. Mike Evans is entering his age 30 season. He's been an incredible receiver, but you don't have him under contract in 2024 anyway. You're not winning anything this year, especially if you're starting Trask. And I don't know. I mean, what are they? They're not really in the Carr sweepstakes. They're not really in the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes. So
totally.
We're talking about Jimmy. We're talking about, I don't know, Brissett. Like, you're not getting anybody anyway. And they're not in a draft position where they can get one of the top guys. I mean, Anthony Richardson seems to be like in the top 10 conversation, as we'll get to with Kyle's mock draft here. But yeah, so you're kind of locked out of the top 4 quarterbacks in the draft class, most likely. And the top free agents, they don't really seem to be in the mix for. So at that point, like I would tank. I don't think I'm bringing in Jimmy and hoping to, try to win the NFC South and then get bounced hard in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, they got bounced hard in the first round of playoffs with they had a losing record, I think, right? By winning the not mediocre, the bad NFC South with the best quarterback of all time. Not at the peak of his powers, right? But not terrible, right? Not really bad at all. Average to above average, I think anyone would say watching Brady play, even if he was not as good as he was even 2 years ago at the Bucs. Jimmy is not an upgrade over that guy, nor is Jacoby Brissett or any of the other non-Carr. I mean, Carr might not even be an upgrade over him. Rodgers probably is. But what is, you get Jimmy. He turns out to be less of the Shanahan product than we thought, and you get bounced in the playoffs in round one.
Right.
I don't like Denny said, teams and entire organizations, business structures are so rarely aligned on the optimal thing to do, from the head coach to the GM to the owner and all in between, that I don't have a ton of faith that they play for the long game. They don't have the longest view in the room, but I think that's the smartest thing for them to do. And I don't think it's much of a debate.
Well, producer Adam is literally begging us to stop talking about Kyle Trask. So we're going to stop. And I'm going to tell you.
I can't blame him for that.
Listen, we have Superflex drafters, listening to us. We got to cover every single quarterback.
I want to know if they can keep Trask.
I want to tell you about the bundle price for the Rotoworld draft guides every season. Lest you forget, is draft season. Get your Rotoworld draft guide bundle today and dominate your football, baseball, and basketball drafts, packed with profiles, projections, rankings. Order today and get all 3 Rotoworld draft guides for the price of 2 plus use promo code BUNDLE5 and save an extra $5 at checkout. You can't afford not to do this. I also wanted to remind our good and decent listeners about the Rotoworld app promo. We need you to download the Rotoworld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster, getting the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your mobile device, whatever that might be. It's available in your app store today. All right, folks, we're going to shift over to Kyle's Mock Draft 1.0, which you can find on NBC Sports Edge, powered by Rotoworld. Kyle, I enjoyed reading through some of this to sort of get the lay of the land about which players might be targeted by which teams. Obviously, things will change in the coming months, draft season being the longest season on earth. But a few of the picks from your mock that I wanted to point out. We'll start with the Raiders at 107. You have Kentucky quarterback Will Levis. Folks, that's his name. It's not Levi's, it's Levis. Will Levis going to Vegas. Is this do you think that the Raiders will chase a quarterback at that position?
Yeah, the more I've thought about it, I actually think, and I've looked at like betting markets, which are informing this, and like grinding the mocks data. I think maybe Anthony Richardson ends up going ahead of him, but I do think quarterback is such an obvious spot for them. Obviously, they move on from Carr. I doubt with the intention of playing Jarrett Stidham in the long term. Obviously, he was with McDaniels in New England, but I really don't see that as like the future. I think he's free agent as well. They might have to re-sign him. It wouldn't cost much, but if you're this organization, you come off of a close but ultimately failure of a season. They had a ton of one-score games. It could have gone better, but you see a solid starter, fine starter, above average in some metrics, below in the others in Derek Carr, and you say that's just not good enough. Like, you have to shoot for the moon. You can't be eyeing bringing back Jarrett Stidham, bringing in Jimmy Garoppolo on a cheap contract. Maybe they don't choose this year as the one to go for quarterback, but then you are gambling a lot on a rookie quarterback in 2024, saving your coaching staff, essentially. You know, if they endure 3 losing seasons, it's probably done. It's probably lights out for them. So I do think this is a team that is probably eyeing a quarterback, and with 4 quarterbacks almost certainly going top 10, they're in a good spot to get one of them. They might not get their choice of them. They're probably, depending on who goes 101, there's been some like Richardson talk there. Assuming Stroud and Young go before them, they maybe aren't getting their first choice, but they'll get a high upside prospect. And I think both of these quarterbacks maybe get a little bit too much discredit as like super toolsy prospecty. They have some upside to them as just pure like pocket passing talents as well. And I just don't see how this organization goes forward with no answer at quarterback entering this staff's second year coming off of a losing year.
What is McDaniel's deal where he goes into a situation where they like seem to have a guy? He's immediately like, nope, not you. And then he's like, give me a Tebow. I want a Tebow immediately. First round Tebow. Is he going to do? I like both these toolsy quarterbacks, but I'm terrified if Josh McDaniels has his hands on him.
Well, I mean, that's what we say toolsy for guys who are probably not great in the pocket as of their rookie season. So I don't know if they're going to be able to upgrade from Derek Carr. I mean, Is Jarrett Stidham an upgrade? Is Will Levis an upgrade? I don't know. But I do think that McDaniel's commitment to Stidham is more than just a bit. I'm hoping, because it's the determining factor in the direction of this franchise. But I really think that there's a chance that they pursue another position or trade down or whatever, and go with Stidham as their starter for this season. I know that doesn't seem likely, but
Where
I really
would
do
Rodgers
think
be?
there is commitment.
I was going to say, as Rotopat would say if he were here, they're also probably the lead dog in the race to get Rodgers. I mean, he would reunite with Javonte. They talked about it, I think, at the Pro Bowl is what Rotopat pointed out. And that would help this team. I don't think they'd be a really strong contender with Rodgers, but it would help the current coaching staff coming off a losing year who can only afford 1.5 to maybe 2 full more losing seasons. It would help them avoid the rookie comes in, struggles but shows promise, second year gets better, your team's at 500, maybe a little bit better. They don't have to worry about that on ramp, which if I'm a coaching staff, I am worried about, because I don't think my leash is super long if I lose 3 years in a row. So Rodgers would help them do that. I don't think it's the route I would take. He's like Denny, 39.
If you don't think they're gonna, if you think there's a chance they go Stidham, where do you think Rodgers would go?
Jets. I mean, it's either the Jets or the Raiders, right?
Seems that way.
Yeah.
So I actually do think that it'll probably be the Raiders where Rodgers goes. So Kyle, if Rodgers signs with Vegas, are they still drafting Will Levis, do you think, or are they?
They won't have the pick. I'm sure I would bet they're trading away this pick to get Rodgers. Which again, I don't know. Rodgers, I think he's just about 40 years old, coming off of a not good year. I get he didn't really have strong talent around him. He was not particularly good this year. How much longer does he have? Does he have 2021/22 Rodgers still in the tank? Probably, but that's a risk you're taking a lot for this guy who's going to cost you a ton of money, cost you draft capital. I don't know if it's what I
even if he does. You're in Patrick Mahomes' division,
right?
I'm not paying. I wouldn't pay this pick for Rodgers.
No,
you also have to pay Rodgers. Rodgers is not coming in on a rookie contract.
Correct.
Maybe 2 or 3 years ago I would have, but not now. Not after last season. All right, we're going to get to a couple more picks that were in Kyle's mock draft 1.0, which you can find on NBCSportsEdge.com. I wanted to skip down a little bit to Bijan Robinson. You have the running back from Texas being drafted by the Bills with the 27th pick of the first round. Now, we actually had I would say an animated Slack conversation a while back, 2-3 weeks ago, about whether the Buffalo Bills are an analytics forward franchise, and the determination seemed to be no, they're not. And Josh Allen helps them look like that, but they have been desperately seeking running backs for various roles for 2 or 3 years now. So Kyle, you have Bijan Robinson going in the first round to the Bills. Does that fall in line with their pursuit of a running back?
Yeah, I think in league circles, we know pretty sure, ESPN runs a survey conducted by actual analytics staffers in the league. They're widely considered one of the more analytics heavy organizations. I think to some extent that's true. And I think when we talk about them spending consistently, I think in 4 or 3 of the past 4 years, they spent a day 2 pick on a running back, not something like us Twitter spreadsheet analytics nerds would say is very analytics focused, but the bar is low for these teams coming out of still very boomer era football and thinking, getting some analytics staffers in their organizations over the past decade. The bar is low to be a quote analytics organization. So I don't want to say this rules them out of being in the smart kids club. Teams that are smart make what we think are suboptimal minus EV decisions all the time. And Bijan is a different beast. It is very difficult to wrap your head around the positional value that we place on running backs. And we have a lot of good data to show that it's one of the more devalued positions in the modern NFL. It's one of the best prospects. He's a top 5 prospect of the past decade, right up there with Saquon, Zeke type of players.
I heard he's better. He's a better prospect than Zeke for sure. Zeke, we gave a big fantasy bump because he landed in a perfect situation with the Cowboys, but as a pure prospect.
So
his receiving is so good too. He grades pretty well in yards per route run, and super interestingly, had a 7 ADOT last year in college football. he gets down the field. Like, obviously running backs can only do so much, and that'll probably it will for sure come back as he enters the NFL. But he has like a special receiving talent that I think is maybe not quite on that Christian McCaffrey level. I think he could probably comp to Saquon Barkley, though.
I think he could too.
Judging by the evaluation of Bijan as such a great prospect, I saw someone I respect on draft Twitter say that he's like Jamal Charles but better, which Jamal Charles is one of the most efficient efficient running backs in the history of the league. How is he going to drop to the 27th pick of the first round? I feel
that's a weird comp for me. I don't think he has that kind of top end speed at all, and he's also kind of a bigger dude. You should think about he's basically looks to me a lot like Saquon Barkley, and I think a team would be bringing him in to kind of carry the load. But I agree. I think someone will probably step up, and draft him before this. One of the things that you can count on in the NFL is that whoever we're currently holding up is our analytics savior and analytics hero.
I know what you're going to say.
Will destroy us.
Yes.
And so let's add another one to the list. Let's have Kwesi Adofo-Mensah come in here, replace Dalvin Cook, replace Alexander Mattison.
Okay.
Get a playmaker on a team that needs playmakers. We already saw them trade for TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah.
We know they're interested in giving up draft capital, try to add playmakers to this team. They're trying to justify this Kirk Cousins restructure they did last offseason.
Right.
They bring in Bijan, and then look, you're ready made for when you get another quarterback in 2024. If you got Justin Jefferson, you got Bijan Robinson, you got to come to Minnesota. What a great offense we have for you. They're going to do it. And we're going to be tortured by this. Is he really an analytics guy?
Absolutely. No,
I was going to go even higher. I was going to go even higher and say the Eagles at 10. The Eagles at 10, another organization that widely considered like one of the most analytics forward. Look, they really are a team where like you should not spend luxury picks. You think you have luxuries, then injuries happen, then players like, cornerbacks, their production is so fluky from year to year. You'd love to just have a stable of them. So if one's having a down year, you can put someone else in there. You think you have a luxury pick like you're the Chiefs. You actually don't. And then it turns out you have Patrick Mahomes and you're great anyways. Not the point. You think you have a luxury pick and you don't, right? You find out that you had needs to fill. But this does look like a roster that can afford a luxury pick. They have so much talent in every single position, an incredible offensive line. They'll lose some defensive linemen in free agency. They still have some players under contract for multiple years. Good cornerback situation. Bradbury, I think, is a free agent, though. Great receivers, great quarterback on a cheap deal right now. So they could tell themselves they could afford it. I don't think any teams can actually afford a luxury pick in the reality of what happens 5 months from now when players are injured in training camp or whatever, right? But they could tell themselves that, and they have an incredible run game. You would say that he would be so much better in their run game than every other team, and it would be incredible for a fan to watch this. He would be great. He's going to be great anywhere, but he'd be really great behind this Eagles offensive line. That's about the peak of where I really did consider mocking them at 10. I couldn't bring myself to do it because I do think they're one of the more positional value focused teams in the NFL, but they could totally do it. I could understand why they would do it. I wouldn't agree with it, but I'd understand it. I've even seen him mocked like as high as like, what I think the Falcons pick like 8th or something like that. Like as high as there. I think 10 is probably the ceiling ish. Yeah. And I'd get it. I thought about the Ravens too. Like J.K. Dobbins clearly like wasn't back to full strength last year. Will he ever be? They're not a ton invested in him as well. And he's probably coming. He probably has like 1 year left on his contract. Even the Cowboys, though, then we kind of got some rumblings of Tony Pollard franchise tag, Zeke pay cut. That kind of nixes that situation. Number 10 is where I think is a ceiling. It'd be such a Kerrane. Would he be like 101 if he goes to the Eagles?
I don't think he'd be 101, but I think in a good situation, you're going to see him go top 5 because I don't think you're going to get a lot of pushback from like guys like me who, normally are going to be a little bit more cautious about like drafting running backs really high. He's just such a strong prospect. Although to be honest, like the Eagles is not where I would like him to go. Like I'd rather have him be on the Vikings. I think on the Vikings, you're looking at total control. There's no one else. The percentage of the backfield's completely empty. You all the projection systems and projectors would have him getting like, 75% of the snaps and like just completely dominating touches. And I think they might throw. Certainly probably throw more often, but they might throw more to the running back specifically as well.
Red zone work would be a little concerning. A good bit concerning with the Eagles and the Bills as well, because they both have such monsters in the red zone at quarterback.
Right. Exactly. So I actually don't view the Eagles as that great of a land. My thing with running backs actually is that, like, I think in some ways you're better off. You want an elite offensive line and a mediocre offense. I think that's the real sweet spot for now that the Vikings don't have an elite offensive line, but I think if you're a guy like Bijan, a lot of the value for him is going to come from being just the total backfield. He can do everything. He can get used. It's Saquon. It's the same bet as Saquon. It's similar bet to Christian McCaffrey, where if he's on a mediocre offense, but he's getting all the work and he's got a non-mobile quarterback, a quarterback who's dumping down a lot, beautiful. That's beautiful.
Right. That's exactly it. So I feel like I'm kind of out on drafting running backs who have a very mobile quarterback in their backfield. I think, Jalin Hurts takes so much of the green zone inside the 10 action that Bijan would absolutely see in a Vikings offense with, statuesque Kirk Cousins at quarterback. So I think that he would be more appealing fantasy wise. I mean, not that if he went to Philadelphia, he wouldn't be. But if either team drafts, if either the Vikings or the Eagles draft Bijan that high, I would say it's a reminder that you never want to meet your analytics kings.
That's right. That's right.
They will let you down. All right. And finally, before we wrap up here for Kyle's mock draft 1.0, you have Jalin Hyatt, wide receiver from Tennessee, going with the 26th pick to the Cowboys, and then Josh Downs from North Carolina going to the Eagles with the 30th pick in the first round. So both of these guys would be, obviously Hyatt would be probably the wide receiver 2 in Dallas, drafted that way, and then Downs would be a much needed wide receiver 3 in Philadelphia. Do you think that the Hyatt pick would that mean that that Michael Gallup's time as the wide receiver 2 is over, or do you think that he could still maintain that role? If he is at full health, if he finally gets back from that injury.
Yeah, it's difficult to say with Gallup because last year he just didn't look like the Gallup we had seen in previous years. Like when they gave him that big extension, was it 2 off seasons ago now? Kind of made sense. He had like a really ascending sort of career path, and it just came apart last year. And maybe it was the injury, right? But maybe he doesn't ever come back to full strength. And even if he does, and he's a strong number 2, a team with a quarterback as good as Dak Prescott, an offensive line as good as they have, should want to be a team where you cannot cover all of their receivers. That's like the rationale with the Eagles, is that when you have a luxury pick, make your strengths, which are like especially informed by positional value. Receiver is one probably like in a conversation for the number 2 most important position in football. They've doubled down on their strengths. They took Devonta Smith and said, that's not enough. We're going to go out and trade for AJ Brown. And that was an elite move, even though they paid him a lot and paid a lot for him to the Titans. He turned out to be a perfect fit for Jalin Hurts and dominated. So I think for them, they're getting for sure that like third receiver where you just can't, you can hardly cover Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. You cannot cover this team's receivers if they have a third strong one. That's the upside case for a team like the Cowboys. The floor case is that if Michael Gallup doesn't come back to full strength at any point, like doesn't resume that 2020, 2021 form we saw from him, if he isn't ever that again, they need someone opposite CeeDee Lamb. And I think CeeDee Lamb is a really strong team's number 1 receiver. No team really in the NFL, unless you have like Patrick Mahomes, can really get away with having one good pass catcher. And that's what they were working with last year. I don't think that's sustainable, especially when you don't have Patrick Mahomes, right? Like they can kind of get away with playing Juju and MVS because they have Travis Kelce. Even Josh Allen, as good as he is, didn't really seem to have a strong option if Stephon Diggs was covered because they didn't have anyone else. That is especially true for the next tier of quarterback, which I think Dak lies in.
Kerrane, do you have any strong feelings about either Hyatt or Josh Downs? Kyle has Josh Downs projected to the Eagles and Hyatt projected to Dallas.
I don't have any strong feelings. I think they're both pretty interesting prospects. Very curious to see how both test as well. But I think, in general, one of the things that, it's when you're doing mock drafts or when we're kind of just like envisioning prospects in the draft, we're always like projecting them to go to like the most empty depth chart. That never happens. Remember CeeDee Lamb? CeeDee Lamb, no one had him going to Dallas, and actually great pick because I don't know why they traded Amari Cooper for a 6th-round pick when they were like about to make a playoff run. That was one of the most bizarre decisions.
You see, they had to actually give Ezekiel Elliott the GDP of the state of Vermont.
I guess you're right. But like, you know, wide receivers are very expensive right now, and they're going to have to pay CeeDee Lamb soon. So I think it would make a lot of sense for them to draft a wide receiver. I think it's pretty much every team has a need at wide receiver. Like, even if you're loaded like the Bengals, then you start to worry about having to pay the guys, and it probably wouldn't hurt to take one.
Absolutely. Well, check that out. That's Kyle's mock draft on NBCSportsEdge.com. We're going to wrap it up here. I will be joining Patrick Daugherty on Tuesday next week for the Rotoworld Football Show. We will have to check on his baby situation in the meantime. But I want to thank you guys for joining me. For Pat Kerrane and Kyle Dvorchak, I'm Denny Carter. We'll talk to you next week.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.